Okay, Seymour Rifkind, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the Entrepreneur Next Door. You know that this is an entrepreneurial small business podcast, and you're a business owner for sure. Um, and that's why you're here. But we're going to talk pickleball, which is uh, super exciting. Before we get going, just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Seymour Rifkind. I've been involved in pickleball for a little over 10 years. And like everybody else, I got addicted to the game real quick and initially just interested in playing, but soon after saw that I could do that much more helping to grow the sport.
Okay, so what I do, and your nickname is Riff, so I'm gonna use Riff, and you
Yeah,
gave me permission to do that. Typically, what I do when we start the podcast, I like to go back in history and kind of let my audience and viewers get to know your
sure.
what happened prior to pickleball lives, right? So, what did you do before pickleball? Or my favorite question, what did you want to be when you grow up?
Yeah. Well, what did I want to be when I grow up? I don't know if I can remember back that long ago. Honestly, the very first sport I ever got involved in, and that was when I was 14 years old, was gymnastics. And so when you ask me what I want to be when I grow up, the only thing I saw was being an Olympic champion in gymnastics. That was my entree into sports in general, but my entire life I've been involved in sports. Now, I was a full scholarship gymnast. I coached gymnastics. I coached about 40 All-Americans, and I coached and worked with 5 Olympians and 2 Olympic champions. So that was gymnastics, and is probably what I really wanted to do. When I grew up, and that's all I saw. I loved the sport. I loved everything about the sport. And for a good 10 years of my adulthood, I was totally immersed in the gymnastics world. But then I realized, I wanted to have a family. That was important to me. Having a family on a coach's salary, especially gymnastics back then when it didn't have the popularity it has today, was just not feasible. So, I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and it kind of started out doing a lot of uh, sole entrepreneurship type of programs. But I started a marketing communications firm, and I ran that for about 30 years. So I did that until I retired in 2005.
So, do you remember the day you first came across pickleball?
I do. I will step back a little bit. A number of colleagues, fellow coaches from gymnastics, when they retired to a community, a 55 plus community called the Villages in Florida.
Oh, yeah, that's a
And
huge place. That's like a country on its own, right?
yeah, well, it started out just being a typical 55 plus community, but the concept was so popular that it ended up developing into a city. And so it is now a city in Florida called the Villages. And there are like 130 or 140,000 people that live there. And approximately a third of them are pickleball players. There's like 250 courts in that area. It's the largest congregation of pickleball courts and pickleball players in the world. And so I've heard about the game pickleball probably since the 80s or 90s. But it wasn't until I was fully retired, and I'm a big Bears fan. And one of the things I was doing when I retired is I would take 3 or 4 day vacations with my sons, and I wanted to see every stadium in the country when the Bears played there. So the Bears
And
don't
again,
play every team
yeah. So, Riff,
every
for
year.
the sake of my audience, that's actually a very large international community. You're talking
Yeah.
about the Chicago Bears, the football team.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was with my son, and we were out in North Carolina watching the game with the Panthers. They went back home, but the following weekend I was going to go to Atlanta. And so rather than going back home and then flying down south again, I flew over to visit my friends in the Villages. And after 3 or 4 days playing, tennis and skiing and all other sorts of nonsense, they finally dragged me on the pickleball court. And about 10 minutes later, I was hooked.
They had you at pickle, right?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so do you know, by the way, I remember when I mean, I've been playing for 5 years, but um,
yeah.
uh, at some point, all of us try to figure out where did that name come from. And I think the last thing I remember is maybe the guy that invented it, that was the name of his cat. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's a
Yeah.
weird name, this pickleball thing.
Right. Well, do you want me to tell you the truth on it? Because, in
Yes.
addition to starting the International Pickleball Teaching Professional Association and the World Pickleball Federation, I also started the Pickleball Hall of Fame. So
Okay.
I had the privilege of meeting the sole, inventor of the game, the only one that was survived at the time back in 2017, and many of the people that got inducted into that first class. So the idea that it was named after the Joel Pritchard's dog, not the cat, but the dog, is false. That dog, they actually acquired that dog 2 years after the game was invented. So the
Mm.
the way the game was actually invented, as far as the name and the invention of the game, is that the Pritchard family lived on Bainbridge Island along with several other inventors of the game. All lived on that island, at least part-time. It was the second or third home for most. And they were out, on their boat. It's a big boating community, and they had a couple of kids, and the kids were going crazy when they came back. There's nothing to do. There's nothing to do. So Joel Pritchard, who was the senator at the time at the state of Washington, this is on Bainbridge Island, said, "Well, go play badminton." "Well, we can't. We don't have any more shuttlecocks." "All right, then go play ping pong." "We can't. We broke the ball." So he goes in the garage. He grabs a table tennis paddle, and he's looking around, finally finds a wiffle ball. And he said, "Here, go hit this ball over the badminton net. We're going to go in and get dinner ready." So, the adults are inside, and they're having a few cocktails. They're talking, and the kids are out laughing. What's going on out there? What's all the laughter about? Well, they peek outside and they see them hitting the ball over the net, laughing and having a good time. They call them in for dinner. They don't come in for dinner. We're having too much fun. Finally, they come in after dinner. The adults go out. They're playing, and they go, "This would be even more fun if we just lowered the net." So they lowered the net, and that was the beginning of the game that we know. Now, how did it get its name? Well, the name actually came from Joel Pritchard's wife, Joan, and she called it pickleball some weeks later because she was a rower. Okay. And if you're a rower and you're familiar with, when they have their events and their not tournaments, I forget what they call it, their races, I guess. They have several different kinds of boats, and they have a 4-man, they have a 2-man, they have a single. When there's people that are left over that haven't been selected yet for any of those boats, they go into what they call the pickle boat. It was the last remaining people that they grab from any which way they throw on that boat. So she got the idea of pickleball because the game was actually invented with a table tennis paddle on a badminton court and with a wiffle ball from baseball. So it was just like a conglomeration of a lot of different sports. They just threw it all together and they came up with that name.
So you go to the villages, you get hooked,
Yeah,
and what happened in terms of your transition from obviously you play, you get addicted to the game,
right,
but at some point you decide that something is missing, right? I'm I'm
right.
I'm thinking about how do we get to IPTPA? What was
Yeah.
that moment
So
when you decide,
so I played tennis for a number of years. My sons both played tennis. I had a tennis court at my backyard. I grew up as an adult learning how to play, but my kids started playing tennis, when they were 6 years old. So we were all used to getting lessons. You want to improve your game, you got to get a teaching professional in tennis, and you have a private coach. And when I came back, probably after competing for about a year, I said, I think I could be really good at this game. I want to get better. So I started asking around, where are the coaches? Who are the coaches? Where are the best coaches? And everybody looked at me like I was nuts. They said, what are you talking about? We just go out and play. I go, I know, but I want to get better. Aren't there any coaches? No, we don't have any coaches. I said, this is insane. So I reached out to our governing body, USAPA at the time. And I said, look, I said, you don't know me from Adam. I've only been playing for about a year, but I'm in the Hall of Fame in gymnastics as a coach. I've worked with a number of elite gymnasts. I come from a tennis background. This game, I can't believe there's no coaches. I said, I can help you develop a teaching curriculum. I said, this is something I know how to do. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They said, what for? Everybody just goes out and plays pickleball. I said, I know, but don't you have a vision that goes further than just going out and having a backyard recreational game? And they said, what do you have in mind? I said, I have the Olympics in mind. This could be the most popular sport in the world. And they laughed at me. And I said, okay, well, obviously, one of us is nuts. And apparently you guys that have been around the sport for a long time think it's me. So if you're not interested, no problem. I said, out of respect for you as an organization, I'm just letting you know, I'm going to reach out to the top players in the world. I'm going to share a strategic plan with them. And, if I get their support, I'm going to start a teaching organization. And they said, go ahead, do what you want, but you're not going to have the support or it's not going to be endorsed by USAP. I said, that's fine. So that is literally how, the thought came to bear. It wasn't about me starting one. It was just, I recognized right away, every professional sport has a teaching organization. It's one of the requirements, from the IOC. There needs to be a methodology to determine who your top players are. There needs to be a rating system. You need to have coaches. How can you ever be considered a professional sport if you don't have these things? So I was light years ahead of where they were, obviously. And, I had already made some contacts with some of the top players, and I reached out to them and I simply said, look, this is what I'd like to do. Would you help me? And they all were willing to do so. So, I met with the top 20 players at nationals in 2015. I shared my vision, and we made a full day of it. We had meetings all day. We went over, a basic curriculum, requirements, and everything else. And 6 months later, IPTPA launched, had its website, and we started certifying instructors.
So this was 2015, so we're talking 9 years ago. Did you, at that time, you had a vision. You thought this could be an Olympic sport for sure, right? Did you really think it would be as big as it is today? I mean, it's literally caught the
Well, I don't think
country.
it's very big yet. So
Yeah, go
for
ahead.
me, we're in its infancy. Okay. We are still in its infancy. I made the statement, not just that it would be an Olympic sport. I said that it would be the most popular sport in the world. It will surpass soccer. Okay. That's my view. And the reason for that is quite simple. As popular as soccer is, it's strictly a young person's game. You're not going to see any 50-year-old people running around a soccer field. So in pickleball, I'm 73 years old. I could compete with still 35-year-olds. I've got people that I know that are 85 years old that are playing pickleball. I've worked with kids 5 years old. So this is a sport for life. And it's a sport that's very easy to learn. And it's much more than just a sport because it builds community. It has all the health benefits of many sports, the physical, the mental, the social, but more than anything else. And I think this is what every single player that I've ever met and talked with, and I've spoken with hundreds of thousands of them, is that it builds community. And where there were barriers between people, those barriers disappear. Nobody cares if you're a billionaire or if you're a garbage man. Nobody cares if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, or if you're Muslim. When you come on the pickleball court, you can have 4 strangers, and at the end of a few hours, you got 3 new friends.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I was talking to somebody about this the other day because Obviously, for full disclosure, I'm certified by your wonderful organization,
Yeah,
and I make my rounds, and we always talk about the game. And I said to someone, remember the good old days where tennis used to be the royalty game, right? You had to buy these
yeah,
fancy white clothes and the
right.
rackets, and you had to belong to a country club. And it
Sure.
was like, oh, I play tennis. It was elite, right?
Yeah, right. It's a
And
status symbol.
it was a status symbol. And here comes pickleball, which is really like you said, where you're a garbage man or you're CEO of a company.
Right,
You get on the court, you don't have to wear any special uniform or clothes. Just
right,
get your sneakers, you get the paddle, and off you go.
right.
It really so my theory as a behavioral psychologist, not by profession, but that's what I studied, is that in addition to everything that you mentioned about the game, I
Mhm.
think that game is providing something psychological to people who had, I'm not going to say miserable life, but people that are bored, that are in a
Yeah,
routine, they don't have
yeah,
hobbies, and they're just unhappy, right? They're
yeah.
bored, they're depressed. And all
Well,
of a
it hits
sudden,
that demographic, Zev, but it hits people like me that have been busy and I've been a happy guy my entire life and
yeah,
successful. But I still love pickleball and I can't wait to get on the court, right? So it's not just that demographic, but it has its fingers in a lot of different areas. And here's my prediction, okay? Because I've analyzed this game a lot, and I truly do believe that there'll be studies that are done and come out that show that there is a significant amount of brain activity that we are reaching when you play this game that you don't reach when you're playing other games. I think that there's a certain kind when we say that you've heard this term, the vast majority of people that play pickleball say they're addicted to this game.
mhm.
Well, that term addiction, there are some physiological as well as psychological elements that equate to the term addiction. And I do believe that, whether it's dopamine or whether it's, additional, other hormones that are going on, certain, paths, brain paths that are being targeted. I think those things are actually happening. And so I think that there's actually some medical research that will be done. And people will see that pickleball is so much more than sport, that it really can significantly change healthcare for many people. You mentioned isolation. Well, we had a huge jump in pickleball during COVID when a lot of people were feeling isolation.
Yeah,
And the one thing that you could do is you could go out with your family and get $100 starter kit and go in the driveway and you could be playing pickleball. And you could have 3 or 4 generations all playing together and having fun. So,
yeah,
that feeling of community um, exists not just with strangers, but even within families. So here's one of the things that I love about pickleball, and I believe we need dreadfully now, is that, in my lifetime, I've seen a deterioration of the family unit, in my
mhm.
opinion. Technology has some wonderful advantages and benefits. I'm not trying to downtrodden technology, but there are also some negatives to it. And I think one of the negatives is everybody's got their phone, and you rarely see a family that is eating dinner together and socializing and sharing and doing things together that help to bond a family unit. Even when you do have dinner together, everybody's got their phone. And so they're texting, they're emailing, they're conversing with others. I think that there's an increase in attention deficit disorder. This whole microcosm of family unit has begun to get disrupted. But pickleball is one of those sports where you can have, mom and her son, or dad and a daughter, or grandparent and grandchildren on the court playing together, laughing together, talking together, bonding together. And we need that. We need that
Yeah.
as a race. I mean, what is family if you can't spend time together, laughing, crying, enjoying life together? and not
Yeah,
just lecture.
and beyond family, if I take my wife as an example, who's not an athlete, never did anything
Yeah,
in sports, it's not for her. And one day, in a rare moment, I outsmarted my brilliant wife, who refused to go play, and I got her a private lesson at the place that I play with, and I said, "I got you a lesson. It's unrefundable. It's non-refundable. So you go play, right?" So
yeah,
she went in. And she didn't get hooked the way most of us do, but she was put into a beginners group, and then
right.
they advanced a little bit. And three of her best friends today are we call them the pickleball ladies, right? The
Yeah,
yentas.
yeah,
But my point is the other aspect is that when you're in your 50s and 60s and maybe 40s, it's really difficult to form new friendships with people.
yeah.
You past it, but pickleball kind of opens the door for
Correct.
that hesitancy. And I mean, how do you find new friends when you're in your 50s or 60s? You don't. You
Right.
have your group of family and people that you hang out with. So that was it. So Riff, I'm looking at your training schedule, the workshops schedule, workshops. San Antonio, Luxembourg, Charlotte, North Carolina, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Kingston, Ontario, Canada, Lebanon, Tennessee, sorry, Dublin, Ireland, Montreal, Cork, Ireland, which I've been to many times on business, Istanbul, Turkey. You're spreading the gospel. I mean, are
Yeah.
you the one I'm going to credit with this virus spreading the other way now?
Well, I don't like to, take credit for these types of things, but certainly I'm one of them. And I think many people would say that, you know, if you want to really spread the popularity of a sport, what is it that you need? And interestingly enough, as president of World Pickleball Federation since 2019, we did a survey with all of our member countries, and we asked them, what are your greatest hurdles to growing the game? So number one, our facilities. If you can't play pickleball, if you're going on YouTube and you get excited and you want to play, but there's no place to play.
Mhm.
So you got to have facilities. And the thing about pickleball is no matter how many facilities you have, it's never enough. We have so many facilities in the United States that are continuing to build, but there's still never enough. Wherever I go, there's lines of 25 or 30 people trying to get onto public courts. The second most important thing is teachers. Once people start to go out and play, they want to learn the game. You have to have teachers to teach people the right way to play. And clearly, IPTPA has been the leader in that area. We were the only for several years. And, I've made it, my mission to visit, I think I've gone to close to 50 countries introducing the game. I've opened courts up at many, countries from China to Brazil to most recently in Bhutan. I was part of a contingency of 13 people, 11 IPTPA instructors, and we donated funds to build the first 3 dedicated courts in Bhutan. We brought 300 paddles, several thousand balls, a couple hundred pairs of gym shoes. So you need to have an organization that is respected, that can at least give people the minimum standards to be able to introduce the game properly, and then to grow as a coach, grow as a player, and different levels of coaching to be able to accommodate the different skill levels that players have.
Mhm.
So
What do you think is the biggest mistake people make when they are first introduced to the game? Is it not taking lessons, the proper lessons by a certified trainer, just getting on the court and start smacking the ball and getting hurt?
I think there's a couple of different elements that we need to clarify in order to answer that question appropriately. First of all, the vast majority of people are simply recreational players. They're going out to play pickleball because they've heard of pickleball. They've already experienced what we've both shared as being the most popular and most important parts of pickleball. They've made new friends. They're getting some exercise. They're having fun. So the idea of them actually getting better and improving is not really a high priority. They're already fulfilling their goals and objectives
Mm.
Tuesday, Thursday is pickleball day with the girls. I'm out playing pickleball. And would I like to get better? Sure, it'd be nice, but I'm having fun and I'm getting some exercise and I've met new people and we go out for lunch afterwards and we socialize. So that's what pickleball is to the vast majority of people. So to answer your question, do they need a teacher to do that? No, they don't. They really don't. Okay. They once they get the basic ideas of the game, their goals and their objectives have already kind of been fulfilled, and they just want to continue it. However, there's another segment of the pickleball population, and like in most sports, there's 10 to 15% of the participants that want more. They like competition. They want to get better. So those people absolutely have to have a teacher. They need a qualified, certified IPTPA instructor to teach them the basic fundamentals. Because if you don't have a strong base, you're not going to be able to make the improvement that you'd like to make. Now, look, there's all sorts of people coming from different backgrounds, and everybody enters at a different skill level based on their background in other sports, as well as their parents, their DNA. Well, what skills that they possess, what are their natural gifts and talents. But I think, from that perspective, the vast majority of people that come in that want to improve don't really understand the intricacies of the game. They just want to come out and they want to hit the ball hard. And the new paddle technology has not helped because it's promoting power, and it's promoting people to basically overpower players. And if you're an intermediate level player and you have somebody else that's an intermediate player but can hit the ball really hard and you don't know how to reset a ball consistently, you're going to lose to that player, even though that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a better player. They're going to stay at their level forever, where someone else who maybe is getting beat up on right now learns how to reset, learns the consistency, the strategy of pickleball, learns that there are more components to pickleball than just, hitting the ball hard. But that I think is the biggest fallacy, is that people, think that you need to come in and just hit the ball as hard as you can and overpower players and hit winners all day. And actually, it's very, very hard to just hit winners. The court's small and you got two people on the court. So basically, at every level, the player is going to be able to get a paddle on it. The key is, does that player have the ability to be able to do something with the ball? And until they become maybe a 4-0 player, they don't. And so the player that comes in with very little understanding of the game can win a lot and beat a lot of players that have a better understanding of the game simply because they're getting overpowered. They don't have the skill set yet to be able to diffuse their power. But once they can diffuse it and counter it, and they've got all those other elements, those other basic fundamentals, they're going to, far exceed, that other player's skill level.
Mm-hmm. So you clearly are a visionary, and one of the things you're doing, I've started to see actually on Long Island in different courts, where I see more and more parents coming on the court with little kids, and
Yeah.
I see little kids starting to get into it. And you started, I made a note of it. You started a junior development program, so you have the certification, for us, a certified player to work with older adults, but you recognize, as because you're a coach and a teacher, that kids learn differently. So you have a completely new certification.
Totally different kind of curriculum, total different methodology. Everything is entirely different. Yeah. And, one of the things that we do at IPTPA, we're the only teaching organization that's a non-for-profit organization. So we exist not to make money. That's not that's not the motivation. The motivation is let me backtrack. The motivation is to continue to be able to increase the quality standards of our sport. Now, that does take money. So yes, we want to make money, but what we do with the money is to put it back and then reinvest it back into the sport, as opposed to putting it into our pockets. As a non-for-profit, I have no salary. I don't get paid. None of our other people that are on the board get paid. We have people that work for us, they get paid. Our coaches that go out and, we have, I think, over 65 directors that certified level twos, they get paid for their time and their expertise. The people that do the master teaching professionals that do the level one workshops, they get paid. The only one that doesn't get paid is me. I still do a bunch of them, but because I'm on the board, I don't get paid.
So did this make it to the next Olympics yet? Is that an official sport yet or
No,
no? It's
no,
not.
no, no.
It will definitely make it to there, then collegiate, and then probably will be as big as tennis in schools, I would imagine.
Well, like I said, I said this 10 years ago. Pickleball will be the most popular sport in the world. So I believe it will surpass tennis. I think it will be. This year is the second year we've had a national collegiate championship. This year there were over 50 colleges that participated. Now it's not an official intercollegiate sport yet. Okay, it's a club sport. So just like some of the other popular sports, it hasn't been accepted by the NCAA yet, but I believe it will because
Mhm.
there's enough demand now. And the way it works is show me that there's a demand for the sport, and then maybe we'll make it an
Yeah.
official sport. And clearly pickleball will be. Now I was told there's a small college someplace out east, I believe. It's a D3 school too, I think. It's the first school to offer scholarships for pickleball.
It's
So
amazing.
they have a program and they're offering scholarships.
So I can go back to school even with my white beard. That's amazing. There's a life. So Riff, so this is like maybe not so serious question, but it is serious question because you've
Yeah,
seen it and I've seen it and I do it. Maybe you did it. We all go and trying to get the best the best new paddle out there, right? And if you watch
yeah,
YouTube, every other day there's a new paddle that's the best one, and the same guy pitches it with an affiliate link, and 2 weeks later there's a better paddle. I play with a guy here who is 70 who still plays with the cheap Amazon paddle he bought 4 years ago.
yeah.
And he's a phenomenal player. So we like to say it's not the car, it's the driver. It's not the latest, greatest $200, $300 paddle that's going to make you a better player. Do you agree with that?
Well, you bring up an interesting point because I'm on the phone just yesterday with three paddle manufacturing owners. So let me share this with you first. The term that I use is it's not the sword, it's the swordsman.
Hmm.
Same thing,
Yeah.
right? Up until just recently, that's always been my belief. But now I believe that the technology and what the USAP is allowing to be acceptable has made it where the sword does make the difference. The sword is actually allowing certain people a advantage over even some of our best pros.
Hmm.
That's concerning to me.
In
It's
what way,
concerning
though?
in several ways. I'll share all of them with you. The first thing I'm very concerned about is safety. Anybody that's attended, a level one workshop that I facilitate, I always tell them I have two main goals every time I walk out on the court where I'm coaching. Number one is safety. Number two is fun. Number three are all the other pickleball things that I'm trying to accomplish. But if it's not safe and you're not having fun, there's something wrong. Right now, the paddle technology is so fast. The ball is trampolining off the paddle. And when you got four people up at the line, you're not 14 feet away from each other. You're more like 7 feet away from each other. Because if everybody's in the proper ready position, they've got their paddle way out in front of them, and the ball's coming off their paddle. It's not coming off where their foot is. So your feet are 14 feet away, but everybody's out in front. And you're taking time away from your opponent, which is a weapon. The newest technology, like the gearbox, I don't even know the model number, but I played against a couple of people with that paddle. It's like a springboard. It's like a trampolining effect. I am very concerned that when you've got people coming from racquetball or squash or even with no experience, but they've got loose appendages and they can smack that ball hard, you're going to see people are going to be losing their eyes.
Which brings up an important point because, like you, because I was trained by you, safety is the first thing I talk about for at least
Yep.
15 minutes. And I
Yep.
and I wear goggles, and I always tell anybody, wear goggles.
Yeah.
I got hit by ricocheting, a ball ricocheting off my own paddle, not somebody else
Yeah.
hitting me.
Correct. And that's
Just
90% of the time, that's what happens.
yeah. And so wear the goggles. They look ugly, but you don't want to
Doesn't
lose an
matter.
eye.
Safety.
Yeah, it's 100%. So yeah, so the new technology does give some people an advantage, but you still have to learn how to control the power paddles and how to understand the game.
So when I hear people like Ben Johns and Anna Lee Waters complaining that the players that they typically beat regularly are now starting to beat them, they didn't improve their game to the point where they're
Mm.
better than them. It's simply the paddle.
Well,
And so here's the difficult part of sports. One of the difficult parts of sports is that we want to be able to utilize technology and better products to enhance our game, but we still need to maintain the integrity of the game. So when I go back and I spent days and hours talking to the inventors of the game, the key people that spent literally, thousands of hours coming up with the idea of a no volley zone line, the idea that you served underhand. Why did they do all those things? They did it because the intent of this game was that you didn't have an advantage if you were 6'5" and 220 and were 24 years old over a 60-year-old woman. That was the intent of the game. The intent of the game was to create an equal playing ground as much as possible. Now, obviously, we get older. We don't have the reflexes that we once did. We don't have the foot speed that we once did. But what we gain is the mental aspects, right? We're older. We've developed patience. We've developed the ability to be able to hit our spots. We've recognized certain elements that are important to the game. And that's why I cannot tell you how many people I know that were tennis teaching professionals, D1 tennis players, and they came out on the pickleball court for the first time and they lost to a 65-year-old woman. That would never happen on a tennis court. That's the beauty of the invention of this game. Now, if the game transitions to being nothing but a power game, it won't be pickleball anymore. It's going to be mini tennis. And in my view, we will lose much of the culture.
So Riff, we were just talking about the new generation of power paddles
Right.
that are changing really the dynamics and what really makes the game special, that allows people to compete against each other without a piece of equipment affecting the entire dynamics of the game. So the new power paddles are changing the game, and you said this could actually pose a potential threat to what makes this game unique.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that people are incorrect, they're looking back 5 years and then they're looking at today's players. And they're equating the difference in players to the paddle technology. And I absolutely 100% refute that. And here's why. 5 years ago, it was still possible for someone that never competed in sports before, that fell in love with pickleball, that practiced pickleball daily, that drilled and could become a national champion. I could give you names of people that, well, I'll tell you people that are in the Hall of Fame that were never athletes. Today, that's impossible. And has nothing to do with the technology of the paddles. It has to do with the types of players that are now being attracted to pickleball. So today we have elite athletes from many sports coming into pickleball. They already possess, because of their experience, both mentally, the physical training, the dedication on court, off court, they've gone through all of that, maybe in baseball or in volleyball or in tennis or in whatever sport they were involved in at an elite level. So the people that are coming into the sport are coming in are younger, and they're truly gifted athletes. That has been the biggest reason for the change in the sport. However, in the last couple of years, the new paddle technology has only done one thing. It's allowed for more speed and more power to the game. And I'm concerned that even the elite athletes that we have today are having problems resetting and softening that ball into a small space. When that happens to our most elite athletes, you're not able to actually diffuse power. And now you're losing 50% of what the game of pickleball, the entire intent of the game was. Because now the player that is more patient, that has better placement of the ball, that has better strategy, that never comes to the forefront because they're always overpowered. And my concern is that every advancement in technology is not always an advancement that's beneficial to the game. I'll give you some examples. Baseball banned aluminum bats and corked bats. Why did they do that? Because it changed the entire intention of the ball, of the game. Not every ball that got hit was supposed to be a home run. Running the bases, developing strategy, these are all part of baseball. Tennis, in my opinion, is nowhere near as exciting to watch as it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you had players that had much more strategy because there was more drop shots, more people were coming to the net, there were serving volleyers playing against baseliners. Today, everybody plays the same game. If you're not 6'4" and 140-mile-an-hour serve and a big forehand, forget it. You have no chance. So they've lost a significant amount of attraction to the game simply because the game has become too one-sided. The racket technology improved, the stringing technology improved. And when I say improved, all it's done is it's allowed more power. And that's a close cousin to pickleball. So more power is not necessarily what's great for the game. And I in particular see that in pickleball. So that's my concern. I believe that if you gave all of the players that you see, top 10 players today, and give them paddles from 5 years ago, you're still going to see great pickleball. Their skills are still great. They just won't be overpowering each other maybe quite as much. That doesn't take anything away from the game. In fact, I believe it enhances the game because it makes it more of a well-rounded game, which was the intention of the game from the start. I understand when people say it's boring if you're doing nothing but 50 dinks and there's no speed ups. But the speed ups occur not just because of the paddle technology, but because of the skill of the player. But when the paddle technology supersedes the best player's ability to be able to reset the ball, that's when I think we've crossed the line. So these new paddles that have the foam that create that trampolining effect, that should never have been allowed. And unfortunately, you know who gets all the blame from my perspective? Not the paddle manufacturers, because the paddle manufacturers, they're out there trying to make money and they're trying to create the next best widget. The blame is on USAP because they are accepting any damn paddle that comes along. I remember vividly, I bought the first Engage paddle back in 2016, and Rob Elliott shared the letter that he got from USAP, and in that letter it stated this is going to be the most grit that we'll ever allow on a paddle. You're at the max today. And back then there were 6 or 8 paddle manufacturers. That's it. Today there's probably 1,000, 850. I know of for sure. Every one of them supersedes that. So USAP is the governing body. Rather than being concerned about what they say is they're here to maintain the integrity of the game, their actions speak volumes in the opposite direction. Give me enough money and we'll change the rules. And that's what they've been doing.
Yeah, and they're creating the elite status for, I mean, not everybody can go out and afford a 250, $300 pack, which,
I mean, look, I know how much those paddles cost. So, I
yeah,
mean, I'm not, and I am never going to criticize capitalism. Okay, the people out there, they're making a living, and they're making a very good living selling paddles. As long as the demand is there and people are willing to pay for it, that's the American way. I understand, but you and I both know that you can buy an equally really good paddle for $100 for $90, and you can get a really good paddle. You don't need to spend $250 or $300. That's
yeah,
obscene.
yeah.
But if people are going to pay it, people are going to pay it. It's capitalism at its best. I don't fault the manufacturers.
So Riff, you're a businessman. I'm truly honored that I was able to finally nail you among all your trouble. You represent a non-for-profit a business that is making a huge impact on the sport, and what you represent to me as a business owner is what makes people why they should go into business to begin with, is the genuine care
Right.
for something that they want to make a difference in, right? Like you
Yes.
said, the money piece, yeah, you guys are paying the people that are spreading the gospel and are trained. Of course, you have to, otherwise you're never going to grow. But what comes out from our conversation is the level of caring. You set out to take something that you believed in, the vision you had is going to become bigger than tennis or soccer one day, but within the confines of, well, let's do this the right way.
Correct.
Let have certified trainers, and let's focus on safety and fun, and let the
Right.
game evolve, but on the basis of those two things. And to me, look, we come across capitalism, we come across lots of business owners and entrepreneurs. And when I
Of course.
was a graduate marketing professor and we talked about entrepreneurship, I always said to somebody, if your reason to go into business is to become rich, don't do it,
Right.
because that's not a reason to go into business. If your reason to go into business is to make a difference and make an impact on something that could use that, then yes, if you're doing the right things, you could still make a living.
Yeah. So,
But
so
it's not the other way. Yeah,
it's been my experience, that the entrepreneurs that are most successful that I run into are the ones that have found something that they're passionate about. And it's their passion that drives them each and every day to excel. And along the way, they've made money. But
yeah,
making money was never the goal. It just is the byproduct. And that's the way I've always led my life. I've never thought about the money. The money just came as the byproduct. I looked forward to each and every day doing what I did simply because I loved what I was doing. And as a result, that old adage says, well, I don't even know I don't remember how it goes. If you find something you'll love, you'll never work a day in your life, right?
yeah,
Something to that
yeah,
effect,
100,
right?
yeah, 100. That's pretty much the quote. And
Yeah.
you're right. You're right. I personally, as a marketing guy, kind of I loathe the word passion because everybody's throwing passion all over the place. I kind of
Mhm.
replace it with the word purpose. So if
Yeah.
you have, and in your case, it was purpose. It was purpose about looking at something that has potential, but allowing it to grow the sort of the right way, right? Whether it's non-for-profit or is for profit, you're right. When you have a purpose and you solve a problem that needs to be solved, in your
Yep.
case, everybody got on the court, but nobody was teaching it. It's not going to grow that way.
Right.
Um, and you do this with integrity and honesty and keeping that purpose in mind. Yeah, the rest will follow. Of course, it
Yeah.
happens that way.
Right.
Um, so we're gonna sit around and wait and see what happens to this crazy game. Um, I
But
had a
the
bet.
game's just going to continue to grow and grow and grow.
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
I don't
look,
know if you read this article or not, but uh, I've been going to China for quite some time, and initially back in September, when the Chinese finally agreed to make pickleball a sport in China and promote it, their goal was to have 100 million players in 5 years. That now has dropped to 3 years. So they are so gung ho for pickleball. The entire climate of pickleball on the global scale is going to change significantly. When China with a billion and a half and India with 1.5 billion or thereabouts, right? Those two countries are ready to just explode on the pickleball scene. And we already have witnessed China's dominance in table tennis and badminton at the last, well, for probably the last 6 Olympics. They've shared with me already. They want to get the first gold medals when pickleball is an Olympic sport.
And they'll probably do it
Yeah,
because they have the discipline and the resources
correct,
behind it to do it.
correct, correct,
And
correct.
I think the limitations to the game growing here, from what I can see, at least in my little cocoon of Long Island, is that commercial space is available but not ideal for pickleball, right? If you have
Mhm.
columns and the ceilings are too low.
Sure.
And public courts, there's a feud between tennis players and pickleball. I think tennis players are going to lose eventually. There's
Mhm.
limit to the real estate that can be
Right.
allocated to it. So it's going to have to be buildings with multiple floors
Yeah.
that's going to happen,
Yeah. But I will tell you this, in December, I did a site visit in Zhuhai, China. And they have just, I think it's being completed right now. It may be done. They have built an entirely new Olympic training center where all of the Olympic athletes in every sport goes to train. The only sport that's there that's not in the Olympics is pickleball. And they put in 32 pickleball courts indoors on 2 floors, 16 on one floor, 16 on another floor. So that's what you're going to see. In the northern hemispheres, you're going to see people that recognize that when you build pickleball courts, people will move to where those pickleball courts are. I said this a very long time ago, and I got approached by a multi-billionaire soon after I made this statement. I said that pickleball is going to be like golf was in the 50s. In the 50s, what did they do? Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus would design these gorgeous golf courses. They built those first. And then surrounding them, they built beautiful second or third homes. And then they built commercial property after that. And I truly believe that that's what's going to happen in pickleball. We have a lot of land in the United States. And I got approached soon afterwards by a gentleman, and he said, Riff, what do you want? And I go, what do you mean? What do I want? He goes, well, you've got IPTPA, you got WPF. What do you want? What would, if I could just grant you a wish? So I said, well, I'd like to have 100 courts, and I'd like to have dormitories so that I could have, kids coming during Christmas break and over the summer, and I could have a U.S. national team training there, and I could invite, people from that don't have good competition, that they could come and they could train and they could teach, and they could live there. And his answer to me seriously was, I'll build it for you. Just like that. I go, what's the catch? He says, no catch. I said, it's got to be a 10-year plan.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I've got 800 acres and I believe in what you're saying. I'll build those courts first, but we have no utilities. We have no roads. We have no place I'll build the courts and I'll build your dorm, but that's it. It's going to take time. And I said, look, man, I don't have that kind of time. So thanks, but no thanks.
All right, so Riff, so last question, just out of curiosity, one of what people consider to be the most annoying part of the game is the sound that the ball makes.
Yeah.
Is this something that from where you sit is going to change, improve, or they're going to keep it because it's part of the game?
So here's another thing that upsets me. You see this?
Quite, yeah.
So this was invented by a good friend of mine, Steve Peranto. Steve Peranto's in the Hall of Fame, and his father is in the Hall of Fame. His father, Arlen Peranto, invented the modern day paddle. Okay? Prior to him, it was all wood. So he was a genius. And he had as much to do with the growth of the game than anything else. Early on, they realized that in certain parks where there's homes, there's noise, and it annoys people. He invented this.
Hmm.
You put this on the paddle and there's no more noise. It's cut in half. The decibels are cut in half. He brought it to USAP, and USAP said, no, we're not interested. We don't want it. We don't see a need for it. What happens? The owl comes out within the last 6 months, and USAP supports it. So if they couldn't make any money on it, they weren't interested. Once they could make some money on it, they're interested. This was 7 years ago that Steve came up with this.
And that was removable. You just put it on the paddle, then you take it off.
Yeah, you could just, here's the backing to it. It's adhesive. You just peel it off and you put it on.
Yeah,
now, look,
amazing.
It's not going to be for tournament players because it's not going to have the same kind of grip and things like that, for spin. But for recreational players, you could buy a $100 paddle, put that on, and now you've cut the noise decibels in half. So if you're going to play at the public parks, where there's some homes nearby, you could put that on, you could peel it off afterwards, and problem solved. That's Steve Peranto. Him and his dad Harlan came up with that.
Amazing.
So I think it's a bit of an issue.
Yeah. So I will.
That being said, let me share this with you.
Yeah.
7 years ago, I did a study because I first found out about this back then when Steve first came up with this, and I hired a firm to check out what the noise ordinances were, a random sampling across the country. Okay, and at that time, the noise from a pickleball never exceeded 50% of the noise variance at any of these communities. So, from a legal perspective, there was no case that could be made. But as we all know, in certain communities where you've got influential people, whoever squeaks that old adage, whatever wheel is squeaking the most is the one that gets my attention. So you've got somebody that is squeaking and going to the board and complaining, I spent all this money, I've got this house and I'm up, I can't sleep, all this stuff. So yeah, it is an issue, but it can be addressed. But you need some people with some vision and that are truly trying to do what's good for the game as opposed to just what's good for their pocketbook.
So, Riff, I'm going to patiently await when whoever is the next president to award you the Presidential Medal of Freedom for driving
Got a long
everybody
wait, my friend.
crazy in neighborhoods all across the country with pickleball noise.
Yeah.
But other than that, this was great. This was an amazing perspective from somebody who knows the game from early on till today. And again, I want to thank you so much for saying yes, because you're all over the world, literally. Hope to run into Coach Z again soon. I miss the guy. And that's it. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Well, thanks so much for the invite, Zev. And hopefully your listeners and viewers will get something out of it. I guess the biggest message from an entrepreneur standpoint is be willing to wear a lot of different hats and do what you love. And, if you do that, you're motivated, the number of hours you put in and everything else which are required, it won't seem like work. It just, you're doing what you love. And I've always said this too, I have a big advantage. I was first a marathon runner and then I was an ultra marathon runner. And I'm used to taking one step and just putting one foot in front of the other. And that's kind of what you have to embrace. You've got to embrace the process rather than just looking at the end result. Because if you just look at the end result, it could be frustrated and it could seem like it's so far away. But, 2021, I rode my bicycle from San Diego, California to St. Augustine, Florida, 3,000 miles to raise money for the Pickleball Hall of Fame. And if I thought about the journey of 3,000 miles on my bike, I probably never would have even started. But my goal was simply hop on the bike today, ride my bike for the next hour until my wife, who was driving our RV 20 miles in front of me, had some food for me and something to drink. And I just looked at it as little chunks. And at the end of 39 days, I dipped my back tire in the Pacific Ocean, and I dipped my front tire in the Atlantic Ocean, and went from coast to coast and raised $65,000 for the Pickleball Hall of Fame. So you got to have that, embrace that attitude. It's a journey.
It's a journey with a purpose, and it's a
Correct.
marathon. It's not a race. And
That's right.
the young generation that came behind us are very impatient. They want things to happen with pressing the button on a phone,
Right.
but
They're used to technology, and that's
yeah,
not quite the way business works. Some
yeah,
businesses do take off like that. So I get it. They can argue that they've got, 21-year-olds that are, multi-millionaires on social media. That's true. But, for most, it's
yeah,
still a journey.
absolutely. All right,
All right,
Riff,
Zeb,
thank you.
you're
Be
very
well.
welcome.
Take care. Bye.
Enjoy.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.